Welcome to Reddit Aliens. People of Ask Reddit, what is your scariest encounter with the paranormal, aliens, cryptids, or other paranormal phenomena? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. When I was around 12, I was looking out my bedroom window and remembering vividly seeing a glowing orb flying and making this low humming sound. It was glowing with a kind of brownish light. I wanted to go after it, but it was kind of late and my parents wouldn't let me leave. I saw it flying through an alley and I never saw it again. I heard my voice whispered in my ear. It was like 2 a.m. and terrifying. I suddenly felt just a heavy, malicious presence that I had to hide before like half an hour before I got the courage up to run to my room. I was on the computer downstairs. Eventually, like a week later, I convinced myself I had just been hearing things. Then it happened again. The same thing. A male voice, inches from my left ear. It didn't happen again after that, and I once more forced myself to think I made it up. While I believed in the paranormal, I would prefer not to have that happen, thank you very much. Until about a year later, when I casually mentioned it to my mother, and she told me she also heard a male voice whispering my name downstairs. Don't live in that house anymore, and while I miss the house itself, I do not miss whatever the hell that was. Long story short, when I was in 12th grade, I wasn't turning my work in on for one class and the teacher was yelling at me, and under my breath I said, "I hope your husband dies." Now, mind you, I was just mad at the time. Within the next 10 minutes, I regretted it. Fast forward like 4 hours, my teacher's husband died of a heart attack. For the next week, I was just out of it. Shit still spooks me to this day. I honestly do feel sorry for my teacher though. She was one of the only teachers that actually made a pretty solid effort to educate me. But yeah man, that's my story. I'll comment later. The golden rule here. Don't ever wish death upon someone or someone's family. Not that you had anything to do with it, but you get to deal with that karmic cycle now. Don't do that, alright? You can do anything, but don't do that, okay? Sorry. I remember I used to live in this 100-plus-year-old house, and the basement smelled like sulfur and something rotting. One night, or morning I guess, it was 3:15 a.m., and I heard the doorknob moving up and down, like someone was trying to come in my room. Me, being half awake, went and opened the door to see no one there. I shut it back, and went back to my bed. As soon as I was in my bed, I heard something scratching at the foot of my bed. I covered myself with the blankets and tried to ignore it. My lamp on my bedside table launched across the room and shattered everywhere, and then I remember passing out after that. I woke up the next morning to everything being back the way it was, but my mom had a weird dream that I was eaten by a demon. When I was about 4.5 years old, the side of our house with the bedrooms on it faced the property next door and was close to the boundary fence. I was in bed. My bed ran along the wall under the big double window. Glass is cheaper than bricks. It was late at night. I woke up, sat up, I looked out the window and could see a light. It got brighter as it got closer. Then the old guy who lived next door came into view. He was wearing his usual shirt with the sleeves rolled up, bib and brace overalls, scraggy straw hat, and smoking his pipe. I thought it was odd that he was wearing a hat at night and he was gliding rather than walking. I shrank down under the windowsill, terrified. He didn't turn his head or even seem to see me. It wasn't until he had passed by that I realized I was screaming. My parents came in. Dad asked me what was wrong. I was babbling incoherently. When I calmed down, I told them what I had seen. My mother smacked me for telling stupid lies, and again for disturbing everyone at 2 a.m. I couldn't have seen the old man from next door, she said. He had died 3 days ago. Dad stayed to tuck me in after my mother flounced out. He hugged me and said he believed me. That was the first time I saw an apparition. It certainly wasn't the last, but it scared me off for life of having my bed under a window. This did not happen to me, it happened to my mom. She always got spooked by ghosts and other stuff like that. When she was a kid, she lived with her mom. It was a pretty screwed up household. One night, she was sleeping next to her mom and something grabbed her off the bed and brought her under the bed. As you can imagine, it was very scary. She couldn't move and had to stay there all night without anyone to help. I'm not sure how the day after that played out, but she was constantly getting hauntings like this. She never wants to watch scary movies like The Conjuring and other movies that fit that same category because of her bad experiences. I was sleeping in one morning and was kind of half asleep. You know how when you're technically gotten enough sleep, but you want more, and your brain is like, nah? It was like that, but I was mostly still asleep. I was just kind of laying there when I heard an ominous female voice yell at me to wake up. Whatever that thing was followed it with an ear-splitting scream that about made me shit the bed. To be honest, I regularly see paranormal stuff, and it usually doesn't bother me, but that scared me half to death. When I was a child, I heard a voice whispering, "Who can possess you?" And then a lot of stuff on my desk fell to the ground. A lot of shadows started moving, like making circles in my room. Then I heard how the lights of the visiting room were turning on and off very quickly. I was praying while all of this was happening, so after I got concentrated in my words instead of the exterior, I saw like a super bright light making a circle in the ceiling, and after a few seconds, everything stopped. We were moving things out of my bedroom to make room for a new bed a few years ago, and I took off my necklace to give it to my mom because it snapped and she wanted to go get it fixed. Before I handed it to my mom, I laid it on the floor for her to pick up because I needed to pee badly, so I went to the bathroom. When I came back, we couldn't find the necklace. It's been almost 10 years, and no matter how many times we empty out that room, we haven't been able to find that necklace. It never left that room. It was just on the floor. I mean, on the floor? That's where you wanted to leave your necklace? Had to be a table or someplace else you could have left it. Not your fault, paranormal, maybe, or, misplaced. To begin, this happened roughly 3 weeks ago, while traveling back from Winnipeg to the Pas, Manitoba, Canada. Me and a friend I'll call G went to Winnipeg for the night or day, traveled there during the evening, and came back the following day at 1 p.m. The way to Winnipeg was normal, took us 6 hours as usual. I've done this trip numerous times, as the Pas is my hometown, which I've recently moved back to from Winnipeg. On the way back, the first 3.5 hours go by normally. I was driving the speed limit most of the time as it was icy plus snowing most of the time, so we come up to the turnoff, where Highway 6 turns off onto the 60 at about 4 p.m. At this point, the conditions are ideal and the sun's just about at the horizon. It was a beautiful sky with a crimson sun. This is where things got really effing strange. The first odd instance happened about 20 minutes on this highway. A red van overtook us right before a right turn and rounded a sharp bend. When we came around the bend, the van had vanished, and it was a long straight high for a bit. I thought that was weird, but I didn't pay any mind to it, nor did I mention it to my friend. Shortly after this, I made a comment about how gorgeous the sky was. By this time, the sun was just cresting the horizon at about 11 o'clock angle. By this time, it's about 4:45, so we've been on the highway for 45 minutes. The highway takes about an hour till you get to the next turnoff, which is the 10, the final turnoff en route to the Pas. We drive for the next 20 minutes without words, just the radio playing. Then my friend G made the comment, "Have you noticed there hasn't been any road signage?" I didn't realize, but there was no signs indicating when a turn was coming up, nor were there any signs in regards to how far we are from towns in kilometers, no signs whatsoever. At this point, I noticed the sun hadn't moved an inch in the sky. On top of this, we haven't seen any other vehicle in a while. I thought this was effing strange, man. So did my friend. Unnerved, I sped up, going between 120 and 140 kph. I started having this overwhelming feeling. Something was effing wrong. Then I noticed another anomaly among the other glaring things that are already making this experience really effed up. All the trees were the same height, and the tree line was extremely dense, like wall of trees. This was scary because I then realized the scenery was not at all what it should be. Where we were should have been a sparse tree line and small ponds and marshland on both sides of the highway. We've been on this highway now for 2 hours now. The sun still hasn't moved, still no road signs, no traffic, and we're not where we should be. Me and G are stuck on this highway, and we're starting to get scared, trying to piece together and figure out what the F is happening. We've both lived our fair share of paranormal phenomenon, not to mention traumatic experiences at that. I've known G my whole life, and this experience is undeniably our most terrifying. Out of nowhere, the sun sets unnaturally fast, which takes maybe 2 minutes. We're enveloped in this darkness of a starless night without a moon. I'm scared. G is scared. Two 25-year-old men, pretty well shaken, and just when this ominous, oppressive feeling was unbearable, we come to the turnoff, out of nowhere. 3 hours we were stuck on that effing highway that takes barely over an hour to travel. But it didn't end there. Just when I thought we were returning to normality, I glanced in the rearview mirror because I thought for the first time in 3 hours I'd seen headlights. I was wrong. In the back seat, sitting behind me on the driver's side, was a black human silhouette with glowing yellow eyes. G and I both saw it. I couldn't believe what we were experiencing. All of what happened is so unreal and so fantastical sounding, but on my life, I promise what you've read is real and articulated to the best of my ability. The next hour and a half were terrifying and mostly set in silence. We finally pulled into the paths shortly before midnight. We were stuck 2.5 hours in some sort of limbo with unreal anomalies that made no sense, and were totally conscious and aware the whole time, making note of the time. To top it off, when we pulled into the paths, I noticed our gas barely moved. We're totally lost on an explanation of what happened. I'm posting for any answers or relation of similar experiences. Seems like a pretty odd experience, like a time loss type thing, glitch in the Matrix-esque. Anyone ever have anything like this happen, or something similar? I know I haven't. When I was about 10 or so, I was looking out my mom's bedroom window while she watched TV. It was something I did often. It was a large window with no screens, just glass. From it, I could see our backyard, the trees in my next-door neighbor's house, and then a clear, large area of the sky. This one evening, I was looking at an object that appeared to be up in the sky. I would say about the same altitude as maybe a commercial airplane. All I could make out was 3 distant flashing lights, and the object was completely stationary, unlike a plane or a helicopter. They blinked steadily, flashing red and blue in succession. I watched for over 20 minutes, and even called my mom over to look at it. She slowly and disinterestedly got up and walked over and looked at it for a few minutes and just said it was weird before she went back to watching TV. As time went on, the lights started blinking faster and faster until finally whatever it was darted insanely quickly to the right, then left the right in a zigzag pattern before shooting off out of my view from the window. I audibly yelled and tried to open the window to stick my head out and look. I yelled to my mom what happened, and she looked out the window again, but by then it was long gone. That was like 20 years ago, and I still have no explanation for what happened. I'm a 100% logical person who has the nerve to scoff at my sister, who swears up and down that she's seen and been touched by ghosts. I still occasionally have nightmares about the flashing lights I saw in the sky that night. In the middle of the night, I woke up. No idea how late it was though. I sleep viewing my door, and it was opening slowly. The light in the hallway was clearly on, but in the door there was a tall figure with bright yellow eyes. He just looked at me. Nothing like any of my family members, but quite human. He closed the door, and I immediately fell asleep. That was creepy, because I don't usually fall asleep that fast. I lived in an apartment complex for 7 years and experienced a whole lot of weird stuff, many with witnesses, but the most unnerving was this. I was laying in bed and getting comfy. I was rolled onto my side facing the wall when I felt someone sit on the bed behind me. I thought maybe my mom came in and I turned to look, but there was no one. I could still feel the dip in the bed. The door was closed, the light was off, I was totally alone. I was freaked out, so I rolled back over and stared at the wall, trying to get the courage to reach over and turn the lamp on. Well, suddenly I feel whatever was sitting there lay down and put an arm around me. I felt pressure on an arm on my side. I felt the dip of weight behind me. I was too scared to move at that point since I didn't want to turn around and see what was there. Eventually I fell asleep. Nothing stranger than usual in the morning. One day, I unplugged this mini fan because it kept turning on in the middle of the night, which was absolutely terrifying on its own. I always had to leave my bed. It's one with stairs. Don't know the English word, sorry. So it was always a hassle to be woken up from a fan that suddenly turned on. However, that night, it turned on. The cable was in the power outlet, so I first turned off the thing, then go back to bed, and a few hours later it would turn back on. Sick and terrified of it, I unplugged the cord and cut it. The next day I confronted my mother and father about it, but they didn't dare to touch it, and also haven't been into my room that day. Still bothers me to this day. I've never spoken about this or typed, so this may sound all effed up, but here goes. I was 5 or 6 and staying at my dad's farm in Northern California, roughly 6 acres and surrounded by a lot of nothing. It was a hot summer day, and I was just standing in the yard out by one of the barns near the edge of the woods. I'd been running around playing and was now just killing time, holding a garden hose and just spraying it in the air and ground, etc. I was sort of daydreaming and started spraying the dirt a few feet away and began to sort of dig a hole with the stream. The water would push the wet soil away, the hole would fill with dirty water, I'd blast it back out again. I was doing this over and over, making the hole deeper and deeper. Eventually, have no idea how long, but a while, I had sprayed a hole a few feet deep, and I just kept spraying deeper and wider. Suddenly, all of the water, mud, just fell away, like the bottom was quickly removed. Picture a toilet flushing, but very fast, leaving a dark hole about a foot or so across. Suddenly, something slapped up against the opening, filling the hole completely. I heard it smack against the wet mud. It was wet and pink like flesh, but had no discernible markings or identifying features. Picture a hole in a sheet with someone's cheek pressed to the other side, but huge. The flesh was flexing somewhat, like what your elbow looks like when you bend it, if an elbow was 2 feet wide. I stood there literally paralyzed. I couldn't move a muscle. I am not sure if it was shock, but I wasn't scared so much as stunned. I remember thinking, if that's the elbow or shoulder of something, then it has to be gigantic. Suddenly, quickly as it approached, it slipped away. Whole thing lasted maybe a minute. Water filled the hole again. I set down the hose and walked back to the main house, then never spoke of it. Hell, I didn't even remember it until I was in my 30s. No idea what it was to this day. FTR, am not a believer in anything supernatural, spiritual, etc.